Today we're back on Reddit for a very interesting thread. This says, people who accidentally ruined someone's life without meaning to. What happened and how do you feel about it now? I stumbled across this and I'm excited to read these, although I'm also kind of scared because you ruined someone's life. Big move on a busy road a while ago. Lots of moving parts, permits, store downstairs, reserve parking, just an incredibly stressful amount of management. When the day comes, me and my roomies were incredibly stressed because if one thing goes wrong, the whole house of cards collapses. It seemed, however, to be smooth sailing. The only thing that was annoying us was that cars kept parking in our reserve space before we get our moving vans there. Most left numbers we could call, so we did, and they would usually leave. Right before my dad is supposed to show up, 4 cars park in the reserve spot. They'd left no number. Their owners weren't in sight. There was no way for me to get any of these cars out of there. To be clear, this meant that there was nowhere for my dad to park the moving van in this incredibly busy road. If he couldn't, we couldn't move my stuff, which was completely blocking the already very tight hallway and first part of the stairwell. Moving my stuff back up 4 floors was out of the question. I had 40 minutes to solve this, so I just called the cops. They showed up within 15 minutes, started writing down fines, and tell me they'll get a tow truck. Half an hour later, tow truck shows up along with a couple of the car's owners. Big arguments between the cops and the owners. All of a sudden, reinforcement shows up, 6 other cops. Apparently they had seen drugs laying in one of the cars illegally parked there. And the dude seemed to be working in the hookah bar across the street, so they detain the guy with the drugs and wait around for an hour to get a warrant to raid the fucking hookah place. Meanwhile, one cop is holding back traffic, including trams in 2 directions, so my dad can parallel park the van. Other civilians are still arguing. It's fucking chaos, and I'm just standing there so stressed out about what's going on. Suddenly, one of the cops asks me if the sandwich place downstairs in the building always has their outdoor seating out like this. Apparently that was also illegal, so they started getting into that. 4 people got pretty big fines and towing costs. The sandwich place has no more outdoor seating, and the hookah place is closed, and I'm sure the drug user was arrested just because they parked in my spot. That is the most chaotic series of events I've ever seen. And to already be so stressed out about moving day, and for all of this to go down, I didn't need anything else. You got someone fully arrested. It's not your fault they had drugs in their car, but it's insane. I was working for a federal program and had a boss who hired her sister without disclosing to higher-ups that it was her sister, a disclosure required by the program. Boss then paid the sister 2 times the usual rate for the job, and sister was logging a lot of extra work hours that she hadn't actually been working. I only found out because my boss insisted I needed to do the timesheets inputs for her because she couldn't be bothered. Boss told me to take any questions to boss's boss and left for the day. I noticed the discrepancy immediately and went to boss's boss to let them know there was an issue with time tracking versus scheduling on her sister's timesheet and wanted to know what I should do. The sister thing was new to boss's boss, and then the discrepancy triggered an investigation that uncovered a whole bunch of other misuses of government funding. Boss lost her job, the FBI got involved, and boss eventually ended up with some massive fines and jail time. Knowing what I know now, I would accidentally report her again. I would also accidentally report her. Coworker would always talk about how Jessica and I were going to go here, or Jesse and I went there, or Jess and I got to do this, that, or the other. One day I ran into him and his wife in the wild. He introduced her only as my wife. I, of course, said, "Oh, Jessica, it's nice to meet you. I've heard so much about you." Gentle reader, his wife's name was not Jessica. I feel nothing about it. He shouldn't have been cheating on his wife. But if he was going to, he shouldn't have spent years telling me about Jessica, then introduce his wife as only my wife. The fact that he talks more about Jessica than his own wife is... And he deserved to be caught that way. He deserved it. So thank God he only talked about Jessica. Idiot. I accidentally stumbled upon a 2.5 million Ponzi scheme when I was in finance. The person involved wound up committing suicide once the feds got involved. Oh, that's heavy. I do photography and videography at weddings. This particular wedding, half the guests spoke a language I am not fluent in, and it was before AI translations existed. The mother of the bride said something derogatory about the groom's mom in her native language, and I included it in their video because she was smiling when she said it. Turns out the groom's mom spoke multiple languages. That is not your fault. It's just not. Because also, if you're recording them, why are they saying that kind of shit? My good friend was scheduled to have surgery when it was discovered she had an aneurysm. I was with her at the hospital with her family, and right before she was taken away, she handed me her phone and said she wanted me to keep it until she was in recovery. She ended up dying on the table She was a heavy smoker for 20 plus years, and that doctor couldn't find any tissue to graft to save her. I turned her phone back on and handed it to her husband. It was maybe 24 hours after her death when we discovered she had been having an affair for years, had been embezzling money from the business to provide for her boyfriend, and signed over a car to him that he was supposedly still paying for. It broke all of us, and I still have unresolved feeling towards her for putting me in that position. I think she knew I would figure it out and expected me to cover for her. I love you and miss you, Amy, but you're a piece of shit for doing that to your family. Oh my god. I don't know what I would do. I don't know what I would do. But also, it makes a lot of sense for you to give her phone to her husband. So I just feel like that you were in such a weird position. And if she thought you were gonna like go through her phone and discover all of this and hold on to that forever, like that's insane. I would like also hand over the phone right away. I would not go through it because I'm not married to you. I'm not like your kid. Like, I don't know. I would feel weird going through my friend's phone when her husband is right here. Many years ago, I was going to the track, harness races, and I asked a guy, Alan, if he wanted to tag along. He was 17, I think. He had never seen a horse before. Each race I would tell him what I thought, and he would either bet $2 or skip the race. $2 was important to him. Then in a late race, there was a horse named Minya Mitzvah. He got all excited. A Jewish horse. I got a bet on him. The horse was awful, and I told him so. Went off at 30-1. This was early winter, and there was a heavy fog obscuring the far side of the track. Off they go and disappear into the fog. Even the announcer is saying, your guess is as good as mine. They're in the fog for a long time, and finally the first horse emerges, alone. We're waiting for the rest of the pack, which eventually the field emerges, but the lead horse is way out in front. Who knows what happened in that fog? We can now see the colors, and sure enough, it's Minya Mitzvah. It cruises home and Alan reveals he bet $10, so now this kid suddenly has more money than he'd ever seen in his life. His brain is doing cartwheels. He was hooked. From that day on, he became a degenerate gambler, always chasing that high. Years later, he told me, I can't stop. Even if you gave me $1 million, I'd be broke in a year. All because of a Jewish horse and me casually asking him if he wanted to tag along. Wow. That's crazy because it's so innocent. You were just asking them to come hang out with you and then leads to a debilitating gambling addiction. That is not your fault though. This isn't my story, but an old coworker. Said ex-coworker was a manager at a different company at the time and managed a team member who was not cutting it. He gave her lots of chances and opportunities, but was failing miserably at the job. He made the decision to fire her. She was terribly upset, loved the job and the company, begged him to stay. He had to say no. Fast forward a few weeks later, she gets a new job opportunity across the country. Needs to fly out for the interview. She was on one of the planes that hit the Twin Towers on her way to that interview. He obviously had no control over any of this, but felt deep regret for a long time. What if he waited just a few more weeks to fire her, delayed her search for a new job, and then she wouldn't have been on that plane? That story always sticks with me. Wow, that's gonna stick with me. That is heartbreaking, and I understand that, like, that would be something really hard to not feel guilty over. But at the same time, like, it's not his fault at all. Like, you know, how are you supposed to predict that something like that is going to happen? Coworker went on a road trip to Seattle. I jokingly asked him to bring back some heroin. I was not a user and didn't actually want any. It was clearly a joke. Well, the day he was supposed to be back, he calls me and says he's running late and might not be there on time. So I don't get concerned when he's not in at his scheduled time. An hour later and I call him again. No answer. He doesn't come in that night. Calls the next day. He was speeding excessively to get to work, still in another state, and got pulled over. He had some weed in the car, just a personal amount, but still not great. The problem was he had a very small amount of tar heroin he was bringing me back as a joke. That joke ruined his life. He had to move to that state in hopes of avoiding a charge for transporting drugs over state lines. Since he had 2 separate kinds of drugs, they pinned a dealing charge on him. Didn't end up in jail time, but long probation, and he had to live in a shitty place for years. I apologized to him and felt terrible. He never once blamed me or had animosity. He knew it was his choice and that he had fucked up. I still felt bad about it. Like, over it, just like a little joke. Like, that's crazy. I mean, buying heroin as a joke is also crazy, but I would also be like, this is my fault. We kept having boxes of parts lost when they were shipped to customers and manufacturers, about 20K worth. I was in charge of operations, so I had to figure it out and keep it quiet since we didn't know if it was one of our employees or not. I installed a GPS tracker in a box and had to ship it like 5 times back and forth between 2 of our locations until I finally figured it out. It was an orchestration between one of our employees and a FedEx driver. Long story short, our HR fired our employee, and alerted FedEx, who did the same. Our company did not press any civil charges, and the DA declined to prosecute because the evidence was very thin. I thought nothing of it for about 2 years, but then a fellow employee linked me to a news article that the former FedEx employee had recently died from a drug overdose while homeless. I don't know if my solving our theft problem directly caused it, but I'm sure it contributed to their downward spiral. Oh my god. Somebody actually replied to that and said, I just wanted to say that someone stealing from their workplace is actually pretty classic substance abuser behavior. It's very likely this person had a substance issue that drove them to that behavior and not the other way around. I hope that you don't let that hang on yourself. I was kind of thinking that too, like they were probably stealing so they could sell for the drugs, like they definitely had an issue prior, and you were just doing your job. Like, they were stealing, like they deserve to be fired. Obviously it's horrific what ended up happening, but that's not on you. Temporarily, I was looking after my friend's apartment while they were on vacation. There was building work outside and someone hit the downpipe of the toilet, which broke the ceramic toilet bowl, flooding the bathroom. I cleaned it all up, then complained to the building management and asked for the toilet to be replaced before they got back, which set off a series of events that led to them being evicted. It turned out they were illegally subletting without knowing it. I felt like absolute shit at the time, but they ended up moving back to Australia because of it and living a good life there, so I'm okay with it now. Wait, they were illegally subletting without knowing? Like, they were subletting from the person who was like renting the apartment, I'm assuming that's what happened. Like, that sucks to get evicted. That's like not their fault. The person who was subletting it should be in trouble. I was a volunteer firefighter a while back. Pager went off for a medical assist. We often had to help ambulance with patient lifts, etc. I opted to give my spot on the truck to the rookie we had in training. Figured a lift assist, he could help the guys and get that mental boost of being on the team. No biggie. I shouldn't have. Patient was an older guy who had been smoking in his wheelchair, wearing synthetics, and with oxygen through nose. Caught fire. Was a lift assist to get the patient onto the helicopter. Didn't survive the flight. The rookie had to see that as his first call. He left brigade shortly after. Some shit you really can never unsee, and he was just a high schooler trying to do some good for the community. I hope he's okay these days. I've seen a lot that'll never leave me either, but I've come to accept that that's how life and death can be. And I was prepared for the moment the helmet was on for whatever came at me. It was probably this kid's first experience with that, and he was unprepared for it. I feel like I've said this for all of them, but how are you supposed to predict that? Like, how are you supposed to know that that's what he's getting himself into? You thought you were doing something good. I unknowingly introduced a really good friend to the most toxic person I've ever come across in my life. My college buddy Chris, fake name, and I both had a Thursday afternoon off and decided to hit up a happy hour. It was early, there were only about a dozen people in the bar, including us and a group of 3 girls. One of the girls was 100% Chris's type. Tall, thin, dark hair, outgoing, but he was a shy guy and didn't have the courage to strike up a conversation. 30 minutes and some liquid courage later, I take it upon myself to start chatting with the girls and specifically introduce Chris to the tall, dark-haired girl, Veronica, fake name for the story. She and her friends were all single, our age, in a nursing program at a crosstown school and seemed like nice girls. Chris, myself, and the girls ended up shutting down the bar that night, and by 10 p.m., Chris and Veronica were fully sucking face and acting like the rest of us didn't exist. I was happy for him, but I got a little nervous when they ended up leaving together, and her friends started joking about not knowing what he was in for. Whatever, he's an adult, and far be it for me to rain on his parade. After that night, Chris effectively disappeared off the map. The only times I would see him was in class or at the same bar with Veronica. The dude seemed off, but refused to talk about it and insisted he was happy. Veronica, on the other hand, refused to let him out of her sight, would make him wait outside the bathroom for her. Surprise, surprise, turns out Veronica was a complete sociopath, narcissist, straight-up con artist who bled Chris dry both emotionally and financially. Highlights include, but are not limited to, fake pregnancies, forcing him to cut off his friends, demanding he drop classes to fit her schedule, and manipulating him into paying for her rent, bills, and lifestyle. Chris came from a nice upper-middle-class family who he was super close with, and apparently they rightfully had some suspicions about the girl. I just figured he was head over heels for Veronica and ignoring us all, but I knew something was wrong when his mom called me and asked if I had spoken to Chris lately. Turns out he had drained his bank account and started racking up significant debt on the credit card he shared with his parents, buying crazy expensive jewelry, makeup, and clothes for Veronica. That was enough for his parents to drive the 4 hours from their hometown to stage a mini intervention. In the end, Chris had to drop out of school, move back home, and his parents ended up getting a restraining order against Veronica. His parents forced him to get a job to pay off the $3,000 he had accrued and ended up forfeiting his partial football scholarship. I lost touch with him once he moved back home, but I sometimes wonder how his life would be if we didn't go to happy hour at Kelly's on that Thursday. Again, I just am like, I understand the guilt that you feel, but how are you supposed to know this bitch is insane? That's crazy though, like draining his savings and racking up debt and losing a scholarship for this girl, like what? I work in human resources, and way back when I was new and naive, I had a home address change request for an employee come across my desk. I couldn't read the handwriting and wanted to be sure I put in the correct new address, so I called their house and their wife answered. I asked her about it, and much to my surprise, she said, "What the hell are you talking about?" The employee came up to me a few days later and said, "I didn't tell her I was moving out yet." Oh, honestly, good on you. I know it was an accident, but she deserves to know. The fact that he put in an address change and he was fully planning on leaving, moving out, and already has a new place and didn't tell his wife? You deserve to be caught. You deserved it. When I was in high school, me and a friend of mine were trying to go to an MLB game. It was right before smartphones and his car didn't have GPS, so we got lost going there. Lost touch with him for a couple of years before seeing him at a house party and brought it up, laughing about how we got lost. Turns out he didn't tell his parents where we were going. His mom saw the toll bills from when we got lost and thought that it was his dad using the car to cheat on her, and that his dad slept on the couch for a year before my friend realized our excursion was a contributing factor to his parents fighting. When he told me the story, it seemed like they had reconciled, and I'm sure the toll bill wasn't the only thing, but it was pretty wild finding out that two dumb kids on summer break trying to go to a baseball game played a part in a marriage potentially breaking down. Damn. Not directly, but a friend came to me once to casually ask me about another friend and how they were handling their new job. The friend with the new job had been ecstatic because it was a huge opportunity for their career in an oversaturated field. It was essentially their big break. I told the first friend they were loving it and handling it just fine, and they asked if they were stressed or anything. I offhandedly said something about them having friction with one of their coworkers, but they were doing fine with it. What I didn't know is that my friend asking me these questions was friends with the coworker and used what I told that friend to help get my friend fired for creating a toxic environment. Not only was it very high school drama, but it ruined the trajectory of my friend's career completely, and they're still struggling today to find meaningful employment despite this happening 4 years ago. Oh my god. I hope you do not speak to that friend anymore, because what is wrong with people? Honestly, what is wrong with you? Not me, but my husband. He's the reason my parents are divorced. When my husband and I were engaged, I drove to work, and when I got there, instead of turning my car off like normal, it sounded like it just died, let out its last breath, and was gone. I called my fiance, and he drove over, had my car towed to a shop and got it looked at. He did all of this while I was at work. I later told my mom about this, and she was floored. You mean he just took care of it? He wasn't upset? He wasn't irritated to have to take care of it? If that happened to me, your dad would take care of it, but he would be pissed and find a way to blame me. My mom left my dad a week later. To be fair, this was their second divorce, but my mom saw everything so clearly that day. That is heartbreaking, but I'm glad that she saw clearly that day, because you should never be treated like that. And she deserves to leave him and to be happy. But that is insane that something so minor, but here's my thing too. It might seem like such a minor thing, I was just telling my mom about my car getting fixed, but when shit builds up for so long, something as small as your dad wouldn't react this way to getting my car fixed, that's it. I'm done. That happened to me in my last relationship. It was the dumbest reason to finally leave. I work in a public library, and because of how our book hold system works, I once accidentally informed some poor guy that he was likely getting a divorce. His wife had placed several DIY divorce books on hold, and they had a shared library account. When I called their landline phone number, the only one on the account, to tell them that their book holds were in, he answered the phone, and when I explained why I was calling, he asked what the book titles were. Without thinking, I rattled them all off. The Michigan divorce book, the divorce book, what every Michigan married man or woman needs to know, etc. I think there were 4 or 5 of them altogether, so it seemed pretty inevitable that he was headed for the single life. We don't typically share our patrons' private account information with anyone, including what books they have checked out or put on hold, but if they're sharing an account with another person, we have no idea which person on that account has placed the hold, and sharing an account means that all the account info is shared freely amongst all the people on the account. I know it's not my fault this guy's getting a divorce, but that's a heck of a way to find out, and I do feel bad about that. I would also feel so bad rambling on 4 or 5 book titles about divorce, and the guy's like, I get it. It wasn't an accident per se, but I didn't know what the outcome would be when I filed a sexual harassment complaint against a high-level manager who worked in corporate for a grocery chain managing their remodels. He lost his job and his retirement benefits. He was very close to retiring. He was harassing every young female associate, and another manager actually encouraged us to file the complaint. He got what he deserved. I agree 100%. Okay, there are so many on here, you guys. Like, this is kind of insane. It like just keeps going. So if you want me to revisit this, just let me know, but that's all I'm gonna read for now. I hope you guys enjoyed. Those were wild. Like, actually wild. Like, jaw on the floor for half of those. Reading these stories, I completely understand why you would feel guilty, but at the same time I'm like, how is anybody supposed to know? How is anybody supposed to know? But I guess that's kind of the thread I clicked on. You accidentally ruined someone's life without meaning to. That's just wow. But I'm gonna go. I love you guys so much, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.